Morning.
Sure.
So if one of you can paste them into the meeting.
You mean the points from Mike from this morning, right?
Well, probably my responses to those points.
Right. Yeah. And no problem to take more than 5 minutes, of course.
Yeah, if we need them, of course, but I hope
Yeah.
we don't.
So all of them, or do you have in mind any point in particular, like the first one?
The first one and the last one mainly.
Right.
But maybe we can quickly go through the other ones as well.
Yeah. Well, let me retrieve the link to the mail archived anyway. Should help. Too many open tabs.
This looks like it will become a pretty small meeting.
So I don't see your reply to Mike archived in the mail archive. Is that only me?
Oh, okay. I just did a wide reply without looking, and it looks like this went to draft IETF core href all, which I think should have included you.
I don't know why you replied to an early mail from Mike that didn't have core in CC yet. That's why it's
Okay.
not archived, right? But yeah, I should have it. I saw it, so I can take content from there. Yeah, that's right. In your reply, core is not in copy. That explains. Okay.
So
Yeah, and of course, my counter replied, and yeah, core wasn't there either. Well, that's consistent at least. Nothing is broken.
it's really hard to do email.
Yeah.
In particular, if you have thousands of nondescript variants of aliases.
But finally, I'm on.
So you just lost audio?
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, I'm still pasting things. Can you double check it's the comments you had in mind to discuss?
Yeah, where are you pasting it into?
At the end of the notes, under a
okay.
new point on href.
Yeah.
I should have taken the first and last one from that mail, at least.
Yeah, okay, that's two I wanted to quickly talk about.
Cool. Okay, well, then we can start. It's 6 past now. Sorry for the extra preparation. Well, welcome everyone. This is an interim of the co-working group. I'm Marco. My co-chairs are Carsten and Jaime. Not well applies. Be nice to each other. Disclose any IPR you're aware of, or don't engage in conversation if IPR that you're aware of are involved. We had from the start the main item from the agenda that's curricular and related to more or less recent PRs and issues. I think mainly 3 PRs. We have just added an item also on href based on the AD review that we got from Mike. There will probably be some more time even to discuss any more item if you want to. But I think we can start with curricular. So that's for Karsten.
Well, I was hoping to start with href because that's supposed to be quick.
Yeah.
So can you show the notes? Do we all have to look at the notes?
I can also try to show that.
Yeah, maybe you can start speaking anyway. There are 2 weird things in href, which is the concise resource identifiers, the CBOR version of URIs. And one is that the status of zone identifiers in URIs has changed. And that means that we are essentially in quicksand here. So things are moving and we are trying to get something done that kind of interacts with this moving space. But I don't think we have to wait for that situation to settle because we are really just defining the CRIs. And for CRIs, it's very clear how to represent zone identifiers for IPv6 addresses. It's just not so clear how that maps to URIs. I was trying to generate some pushback on waiting for that situation to settle because that would take another year or so. Right now we have a definition for CRIs that allows a zone ID at the place where you can have an IPv6 address. And that's really all we need to say. And then we need to interact with the complicated URI side of this, where we have an RFC 6874, which is still in force, but there is an intention to obsolete this. So many people think it already has been obsoleted, but that's not true. It's still in force and it's actually being used by people. So even if we deprecate it now, we probably still have to have an answer for handling zone identifiers. So that's the situation, and I just wanted to make sure that people agree that this kind of pushback is actually justified. Of course, the alternative would be to just wash CRIs clean of any zone identifiers. That would, of course, work, but then people have been using zone identifiers for various applications. Okay, we get one chat comment that pushback is justified. Okay, that was one thing, and the next thing is the second comment. is even weirder because IRIs have something like a 2 ASCII algorithm that can be used for generating ASCII URIs from those IRIs, from specific parts of those IRIs. And the interesting thing is that the document that defines the 2 ASCII algorithms, 3490, is obsoleted. So we are normatively referencing an obsolete document. And the fun is that all the other documents that needed to reference 3490 simply reference its successor document 5890, but that doesn't define 2 ASCII. It also recurs to 3490 to define 2 ASCII. So that's a weird property of those documents, that the only way you can actually normatively reference the algorithm we are after is by referencing an obsolete RFC. So I would expect the IST will talk about that, because that's of course a situation that is not fine, but I don't see anything we need to change here, because in the end, because 3987, the IRI standard, depends on 3490, that there is no way we can get around using that document, except if we completely take out the 2 ASCII considerations, which are in an aside as a may behavior. So that's also one possible result, but I'm not sure that people will be happy if we completely lose that. So this is kind of a very, very specific topic about IRIs and URIs. Christian. Did you want to say something?
Sorry, wrong unmute. Seems to me that the reviewer is already happy with having that download and just documented it's fine. So
okay,
what's left to do?
Good. Okay, so I think I can address the other comments from Mike in the next 5 days or so. So we should have an updated href ID at the start of next week, and as usual, I would love to get the PRs reviewed when I make them, but I think we are moving forward here in a good way. So that was the href.
Thanks. And when you follow up with Mike again on the list, yeah, please add core back to CC, so since it got lost.
I sent the reply to the wrong email address. I'm sorry. I probably
no worries.
Copy it over to the working group list as well. Okay, so the other document that we have on the agenda today is corrections and clarifications. This is a long-running working group document where we don't even know whether we actually ever will publish it as an RFC. Maybe it's published, its content is going to be published in other forms, but we want to maintain this as a running consensus document on how to handle some darker corners of the core-related specifications. So the current draft expires in a couple of days, and I thought it would be good to look at what we have in the way of almost completed PRs, merge them, and generate a next version of that document, so we can point to that from other places. So looking at the various issues and pull requests, I thought we should actually try to finish those pull requests and maybe get 1 or 2 more issues done, and then we probably have exceeded our capacity for this week. So the first one is the query parameters pull request. I think we had a pretty extensive discussion about that already. The problem here really is that according to the law of URIs, query parameters are just part of a URI like path components, so they are nothing special. But we all know that our various server implementations have ways to install resource handlers that react to a set of URIs that differ in their query parameters. So yeah, there are people calling these things endpoints or some other name. I stick with resource handler here at the moment. And these two perspectives are not going to go away. So the URIs and the definition of URIs in 3986 is very clear about that. The definition of HTTP is very clear about that. The query parameters are just part of the resource name. And people are not going to change their code implementations to make it difficult to respond to any query parameter. So that perspective is also not going away. And I think we describe this in the document right now, and that's a good end result to just have a place where we can point to and say, this may look weird, but that's because query parameters are weird. And yeah, pointing out the duality seems to be the end result. And I wrote a final paragraph that is cited here on the slide. Yeah, I would love to get a review of that pull request, but I think this should be a slam dunk here. Any comments? Then
none yet, but I'll have a look at the review.
Thank you very much. So let's look at 45, and 45 was essentially a place where we noticed that there is a kind of shortcoming of the set of core documents where nothing is really wrong. There is no inconsistency, no conflict that cannot be implemented or anything. But we have components of the protocol that cannot be used as much as maybe we want them to. And we invented the word gap for that, which maybe is not the best word, but that's probably what we are going to use. And the first example where we notice this is the use of BERT, which essentially is just a way to run the block protocol with blocks that are larger than a kilobyte, or multiples of kilobytes, actually. And, or kibibytes, really. And when we did CORB over TCP, we tried to make sure that we define BERT in a way that it reliably works with reliable transports, but did not try to touch the rest of the ecosystem because that's difficult. So there are two problems. Usually, to use BERT, you need to know that you can use it. And right now, there is outside the reliable transports, there is no way to run the negotiation that would give you that information. And the other questionable aspect is that if you know nothing about your path MTU and don't have a sequence preserving kind of transport, then you have to do something that's similar to fragmentation to actually make use of BERT. And that's not useful. You can use the block protocol for that much better than fragmentation. What we need to clarify, I think, here is The draconian words we have in 8323 about not using BERT outside of TCP and WebSockets are simply saying we haven't thought about that. We haven't defined the context in which BERT also might work. It's not saying, hey, standardizer of the future, you are not supposed to use BERT for anything because it's toxic or something. That's not the case. And I think people have been confused by those words in 8323 to think BERT is somehow something that has to be handled very carefully. Christian.
I generally agree, but I think that the dangerous reading is not just you're not supposed to use BERT. The more dangerous reading is, but other transports could use that size exponent 7 for other things. That's the that's the even more dangerous thing that we have to take care of.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes. And actually, it's already in the comments, and I have failed to pick this up. Okay, so yeah, that's the clarification, which by itself has no effect until we provide a way to actually use it in other contexts as well. So the typical gap situation is we have something that really is fully specified but needs some context for it to work, and we don't have that context.
We don't necessarily need to have means of establishing that context, because the main place where I'd like to use it is OSCORE, and there are many ways of setting up OSCORE contexts, and some of them are just they are configured on both sides to match, and then work. And for those kind of, there is no need for an extra protocol to negotiate it. It could just be part of what drops into there. Sure, if they come from ACE, it would be good to have agreement parameters there, but often enough they just appear.
Yeah, I on my slide 4 I called this that it always can be used between consenting adults, but that's the anathema of a protocol definition. So I think we still have to do that work and say, how do we use BERT with OSCORE? It's not much work, but it has to be written up. Do you agree with that, Christian?
Yes, I did.
Good. Okay, so yeah, this requires a little bit more work. So adding the gap category to the document. And when we have done that, then it would be nice to get reuse again. And yeah, the third item here, any ideas about negotiation? Having OSCORE as an example, I think is a very good thing to do this. And we might even incubate that protocol, that negotiation mechanism in this document until we find a better place to put it there. Do you have some specific ways of doing this, Christian? Where would it go?
I think this would largely go into all the other OSCORE parameters that are sent, for example, from an authorization server to a resource to a client. Let's say, by the way, the resource server you're trying to talk to supports inner blockwise up to the size of whatever, which is equivalent to a BERT size.
Do we have an extension point that we can tap?
There is an extension point. I don't know it off my head, but yes.
Marco, do you know the extension point?
Yeah, well, also about that, it depends on what exactly we want to use with ACE, for example. If it's the OSCORE profile, there is a CBORD data item, basically a CBORD map in the response from the AES to the client. But then we have an ongoing profile, the EDOC and OSCORE profile, that has its equivalent CBORD data item to instruct about the same things. So you'll be about defining a parameter or a structured parameter for that item to specify that information. That at least in the ACE universe. Then of course you can think of ad hoc.
Yeah, of course, I'm interested to make it work with ad hoc as well. So would we use one of these EAD?
I guess so. It boils down to that.
Okay.
Or to pre-knowledge, if you have further ways to know out of band how things work, which is about the ad hoc application profiles.
Okay, so that would be the case of consenting adults.
Knowing in advance, you may still have consenting adults negotiating in band with EAD items at the beginning of ad hoc, because, and that was my main point I raised the hand for. BERT is going to be used with OSCORE anyway when actually communicating that all this negotiation has to have happened first somehow.
Okay. So
But
if you have a few words we could drop into PR45, we don't have to complete the protocol specification, but just saying how it could be done, I think would be useful for readers to figure out, okay, a little bit of work needs to be done for that, and CoAP makes it easy to do that work. So if this work is desired, we put it somewhere.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we have a pull request about treating proxy scheme as having a default. What we are missing right now is some text that goes into a little bit more detail how this actually simplifies the work of a forward proxy. So having a paragraph or two to put into pull request 43 would be useful. Now, this is a change, so we need some normative document to actually make this change. And I noticed that we are just now defining proxy scheme number in the href document, which unfortunately is a slightly advanced too far, but we could still put it in there. If we define how proxy scheme number and proxy scheme interact, we could, of course, also define what happens if none of them is there. And that would be an update, but I think an update is pretty innocuous here. So otherwise, we would need to introduce another category for the CoCLA document, which is a feature. We could also, again, incubate it here and standardize elsewhere. So I'm wondering whether I'm looking at this the right way. Okay, let me take your census. No, that's a new one, sorry. Thought I had another slide about this. So yeah, I'd like to have this paragraph or two why it's useful to have a default for a proxy scheme. And then we would point to the href document, how this is actually handled there, but we can incubate it in this document for a couple of weeks. But at some point we have to push it into href or get a problem with Mike about that. Okay, so issue 48. This is ugly. There's another issue 14, that is similar or related, and we probably should try to ensure that we generate consistent solutions. So the question really is, how much do confirmable messages and non-confirmable messages differ in the way unallowed methods or bad options are managed? So for the reliable exchange, the CONAC exchange, we have a definition that the recipient needs to send an acknowledgement message, probably with something like 405 or 402, or reject the message by sending a reset to the confirmable message. So that's written up for reliable messages. For unreliable messages, of course, we don't have an acknowledgement message. And so we don't mention this here. But I think what we really wanted to do and didn't quite write down properly is also allow something like a 405 or 402 response if the server can figure out what this message might have meant. So if it uses a reserved class or has a message format error, there's little we can do. So that in that case, what the text that's there already is fine. But what do we do if really we want to be sending a 405 or a 402? And there's a little bit more text about that. So in the critical elective definition, it says unrecognized options of class critical, so an option that a server does not implement, must cause the message to be rejected, and reject is a reset message in this case. And we have another piece of text in the method definitions where it says that an unrecognized or unsupported method code must generate a 405 method not allowed piggybacked response. Now that's a bit of a layer violation because we're constraining the server implementation in its choice between piggybacked and separate responses. But yeah, that decision has been made, so we're probably not going to change that, but it makes this a little bit uglier than it could be. Now, this is something that talks about confirmable messages, because otherwise we couldn't have piggybacked responses, so that there are no piggybacked responses for non-confirmable messages. I think the intention here was to say, you generate a 405, and if you are using a confirm message, you send that 405 back in a piggybacked response. But if you are sending a non-confirmed message, then you're just sending back a 405 method not allowed, because you cannot do the piggyback. That's my interpretation of what I read here. And if we can agree on that interpretation, then we would easily have a consistent way to reply to these. So both for con and for non, we could have 405 or 402 messages which tell you more about what's going on than simply a reject. Christian.
So my view here is that this requirement of being piggybacked has not been enforceable from the beginning, because co-op has allowed proxies to be in there from the beginning. Proxies can span multiple transports, have different parameters of their time responses, of their timing requirements. So it is not doable for a proxy to cover to do half of what a proxy should be doing according to 7252 if it has to wait until it has the response back in order to send its own ACK. And if it is allowed to send an ACK to a con while sending while forwarding the request, then it has to be allowed to send a 405, because that could be coming from the origin server in a non-piggyback response. So I think this piggyback is just enforcing this would break so much of co-op that I think we just should state that this piggyback was a constraint that has not been enforceable in the larger ecosystem. And sorry, we just have to break that requirement.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, so doing the hard correction here certainly simplifies this solution compared to soft clarification. Great. I think I'm done.
Thanks, Karsten. And just to fix what I said before on the previous PR on way of advertising, yeah, I mentioned for ad hoc EAD items and ad hoc application profiles. EAD items, I think, are a very viable choice. Ad hoc application profiles, not really, because they're supposed to tell how to run an ad hoc execution, not what happens after that. But it's in the note that I added up on line 125.
Thank you.
I do think that there is some room in the application profile for that, because the cipher suites, for example, and all that downstream OSCO processing is in a sense part of the application profile. So
yes.
in a sense, like everything that goes into the setup of the OSCO context has to come from somewhere, and much of that will be profiled. So it's not, I don't think it's excessive to put that in there as well.
Okay. I'll add it up here too. Thank you.
Good. So when you drop me a paragraph or two, then I will update PR 45 to say that. And yeah, so the best case situation here is that we, in the end, have 4 PRs merged and done about 10% of our work on corrections and clarifications. Wonderful. Yeah, Christian, let's call it a day.
One minor thing related to DNS over co-op, just highlighting a point raised by Mike. He's wondering if there is where we can have an official definition of core that is used in DNS over co-op, and he's suggesting to point informatively to 6690, that is already an informative reference in DNS over co-op, but he's giving quite some freedom. The main point is producing a new version of the draft. But does anyone have a better pointer to refer to?
Probably not a better pointer, because 7228 does something different. But I think the definition of constraint that we are still stuck with is 7228. So I would use the combination of 6690 and 7228, and clearly 6690 does not reference 7228, so we have to put it in our reference as well. So 6690 defines core, and 7228 defines the C in core.
Okay, Christian agrees. So take that as a suggestion as documents editor for the new version.
Great.
Okay, now I think we're really in the end. If there's anything else anyone wants to discuss today about core.
Yeah, just the scheduling. So the
right.
Next interim is on the 2nd
of July. Yeah, that's the last one before Madrid, and I can take the first 30 minutes only. Then I'll really have to leave. But yeah, in principle, the meeting is planned.
Okay.
And then after Madrid, we plan to resume at the end of August, on August 27, if I'm not wrong. That should be the Wednesday. Yeah, 27. And that gives room for 4 meetings before Montreal.
Good.
Okay. Thank you all for today. Have a
Thank
good
you
one.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was a good meeting.
Thanks
Bye.
for the minutes.
Bye.
Bye.